Hey y'all, this is Ed,
This is Kara.
and this is your day's dumpster fire. You like that weird awkward pause where I didn't know what I was doing?
Well, I wasn't going to mention it considering we could just edit it out, but you just outed yourself.
I've gone through multiple computers. I've literally thrown one out the window. It's been a process.
Yeah. That was your day's dumpster fire.
The real dumpster fire, or the trash can fire, and I'm going to steal it from you for this time here.
Do it. Because I didn't have anything prepared.
Yeah, neither did I. So the real trash can fire of the day here is, for those of you who have a podcast and where you try to have like a guest speaker come on, the single act of trying to work out multiple schedules at one time it's nearly impossible.
Adult schedules, two of which who have young children.
Yeah, people have families, they have adulting they have to do all sorts of weird crap. And I could have gotten one of my kids on here easily enough, although they wouldn't work for today's episode. But yeah, I have a guest speaker, or a guest on today's episode. We spent the past couple of weeks trying to get our schedules to line up, because I wanted to make sure that I had an actual what's the word I want to use? An expert of some sort who could maybe shed some light on today's topic, which is the famous Therac 25 incident, or incidences, if that makes sense.
Well, I'm glad you found somebody who knows what they're talking about, because I know, again, here we are. I know nothing about this particular topic, so
that makes
why don't you introduce him?
Yeah, so Cameron, introduce yourself, tell us who you are, what is it that you do. I rumor has it that you're the cure for cancer.
That's a false rumor. I am Cameron, and I am not a total expert on this, but I do work in this field, so I know some about this, more than most people probably.
So what is it are you exactly? Because I've known you for years, since you were in high school, but you're like a radiation therapist, or I don't know.
Kind of. So in radiation therapy, like a lot of people who have cancer, like around 50% of them will typically receive radiation therapy at some point. And radiation therapy is kind of like a very team-oriented type of a treatment. So the physician that you will see is a radiation oncologist, and they are going to kind of manage and be the head of your treatment, right? And they're going to work with your medical oncologist who does chemotherapy, and they're going to work with your surgeons, and they are going to decide your treatment, right?
Okay.
But then there's other people in that line, right? So there's radiation therapists who will set you up and deliver your radiation. There are medical dosimetrists, which is what I do, and we design a treatment plan on a CT scan that's specific to you. It can only be used on you. It would be unsafe on anybody else. So that's a very custom treatment, which is one of the things I like about radiation therapy is nobody gets the exact same treatment. And then you have medical physicists who do a lot of quality assurance. They make sure that we use these really cool high-powered machines called linear accelerators, and they ensure that they are doing what they are supposed to do, and they're acting predictably to make sure that everybody's safe. So it's a big team effort, and everybody kind of helps each other out. And we also have nurses who follow up with patients and medical assistants and so forth.
So it almost sounds like there's a almost like a series. I'm gonna say checks and balances, but I feel like when somebody is unfortunately diagnosed with some sort of cancer, you've got a whole series of people whose skill set kind of overlaps each other. In doing so, that kind of keeps the whole thing kind of working right. I mean, is that a proper assessment of it, or am I completely off on that?
No, I don't think you're wrong. I mean, everybody has like very specific skill sets, right? Like there's a lot of things that I don't know how to do that other people in the clinic can do, like the therapists do or the physicists do, particularly the physicians. You know, the physicians have really specific things that only they can do, which is a good thing because that's what they're trained on.
Okay.
But even the physicians, right, like in our clinics, their work gets reviewed by other doctors just to make sure that everybody's kind of following similar protocols and stuff.
Gotcha. Okay.
So, but there's a lot of overlap, and nothing happens without multiple set of eyes reviewing it and making sure it matches what everybody expects.
Gotcha. So yeah, if you get a set of instructions from from one person that like what it is they're prescribing and why they are prescribing it, and then you can do your treatment, and then I'm pretty sure you write some report down of what exactly it was that you did, so then when the next person gets it, then they know exactly what you did, and then they know what to do next.
Yeah, there's a lot of documentation of what we do, and then I document what I do, and then the medical physicists usually check it, and then even the doctor looks at it and signs it at the end just to make sure that everybody's on the same page of what it is.
Gotcha. And so yeah, that was the thing I kind of wanted to have you on for. This is the thing that I feel like your daily process revolves around a really horrific incident or a series of incidences from like 1985 to 1987 involving a radiation therapy machine called the Therac 25. Long story short, this thing, in very, very specific and rare circumstances, this machine would result in radiating people with like a very severe amount of radiation in a concentrated area, like 20,000 rads, whereas, what is a normal person supposed to receive at approximate at any given time?
Like, are you asking me if 20,000 rads is a normal amount of dose?
No, I don't think 20,000 rads is normal, but what is the normal, amount of rads that somebody should be receiving?
So normally we don't, like, rads is kind of the unit they used to use.
Yeah, it's probably a little scary term to hear nowadays.
Yeah, normally, like, in the clinic, we use, like, gray or centigrade.
Okay.
But, so typically, like, when you're treating somebody, you would get, like, 180 or 200 centigrade in a day.
Okay.
And then you'd come back and you would repeat that. And they have really specific amounts for depending on what type of cancer you have, where it is in your body. And it's set up that way because they understand, your body can receive this much from day 1 to day 2. A lot of your healthy normal tissue will heal, but a lot of the tumor cells, they struggle at fixing damage to their DNA. They're specific amounts that we have a lot of data on, but 20,000 rads would never be used.
That's basically a death ray.
And in one day, like, it gives your body no time. You could spread out 20,000 rads over 30 days.
Okay.
And that would be, more of a normal amount.
So these 6 people that kind of got roped into all this, they were experiencing what a normal person would experience over 20-30 days in a matter of seconds.
Yeah, because normally in a day you'd get like 180 to 200 rads.
Okay.
So
yeah.
At one time, right? Like, so if a patient comes and they get treated for 3 to 20 minutes, depending on setting up and stuff, they would not get anywhere near 20,000, that's just too much. Then your body it doesn't have time to heal the damage that gets done.
Not to mention, too, the patient would probably let you know that they're receiving 20,000 rads at any given time.
Well, they might not.
Really?
You might not feel it. I
Okay.
guess at some point you would. I don't know. There's not like a lot of data on people getting hit with that much radiation, right? Like a lot of the data we have on damage from radiation comes from, dropping atomic bombs and
Or
studying the after
Chernobyl.
effects.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, Chernobyl, that's a great example. It's not like we go test these high numbers on people to see what happens, right?
I guess that's a really tough thing, like a really tough research topic to get funding for.
Sure.
Hey, I want to blast people with toxic amounts of radiation and see what happens. Give me money.
Do you think it would work if we were in the 1800s?
Oh, of course.
I just want to throw that out there.
Oh, heck yeah. Yeah. Anything flew in the 1800s. I mean,
that's what I thought too.
Yeah. I mean,
people who discovered X-rays, like, were taking X-rays of their hands all the time, like every day. They're like, "What's under my hand today?" And sadly, they learned that that's not a good way to study.
So 1885, thumbs up. 1985, thumbs down.
Or cancerous thumbs down.
or 3 thumbs down.
We could go on with this joke.
So, okay, cool. So let me give some background information here. So, in 1982, the Atomic Energy of Canada Limited, or the AECL. So these are kind of maybe the culprits here. So the AECL in 1982, they developed what was known as the Therac 25 machine. And this thing was kind of revolutionary in its design and its functionality and its capabilities. It followed after the Therac 6 and then the Therac 20, which they worked fine, but I think the Therac 20 used just strictly used electrons to create both the electron beam and the photon or the X-ray beam. And the Therac 6, I think, used a radiation for the X-rays. It used like a radioactive material. I think it was like cadmium or something like that. I don't know if that sounds right to you, Cameron.
I'm not sure. I mean, this predates my life, but yeah, there's a lot of cobalt machines from that time period.
That's it, cobalt.
But there's cobalt, yeah.
Yeah, cadmium. I know cadmium. They use that in some nuclear reactors to kind of help it, like, start it. And I remember sitting in an airport one time talking to a nuclear physicist who worked at the Palo Verde nuclear power plant, just outside of our city here in Phoenix. And he mentioned that like 1 gram of cobalt 65 is so radioactive that it could kill everybody in a 4-story building within minutes. So yeah, that seemed pretty volatile. I don't know. Does that sound right to you, Cameron?
So I don't know about cobalt 65, but we use cobalt 60.
Okay.
But it does produce radiation that's going to penetrate deeply, right? Like it's not gonna stop at like a wooden door. You know what I'm saying? It's gonna traverse through things, including your skin.
So that makes sense for them to switch to a linear passive machine, where instead of taking for the X-ray source, because I know we were talking before we started here, you were saying that the X-rays will penetrate deeper down. So if you have like a prostate cancer or a breast cancer or some sort of a cancer that's further down, you'd want to use an X-ray. And then if you had something more like a skin cancer or something like that, you'd want to use something more topical, like an electron beam.
Mm-hmm.
Correct. And so instead of having a highly radioactive source, like cobalt or cadmium or something like that, the Therac 25 was kind of famous because it used a device called I think it was, what was it? No, it was a double linear pass, meaning that it could create both X-rays and electron beams that, like, it would penetrate further, if that sounds correctly, without having to use a toxic metal source.
Yeah, right. And what's nice about, and that's similar to what the machines we use now, right? Is, when you had a cobalt machine that's radioactive material inside of it, like, it's never really off, right? You're just opening and closing, these big sheets of metal to block it and so forth, but it's never turning off, right?
Yeah.
Which is nice now is the radiation we're using, the photons, the X-rays, we're generating them. So when you turn off the machine, you can walk in the room and it's better for the therapist or the patient because there's nothing on anymore.
Yeah.
And I was interesting about the Therac 25. I was looking at it a little bit, is that it was treating a higher energy, which in this case is 25 MeV or megavoltage. That's higher energy than I think any machine that I know of that we use now. Most of them will go to like 15, maybe. And
wow.
I'm
because they run more efficiently and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's not like an energy that off the top of my head I know a lot about, but that's surprising to me that they would use that.
Yeah. So
it would penetrate deeper. So because like the cobalt machines you're talking about, they use, I think it's like around like 4 MeV, or sorry, 4 MV, which is going to penetrate more than like an electron beam. But this will go way deeper, the 25.
Okay. So it's really a matter of taking electrons and putting something in front of it to produce the X-rays. Because I think with the Therac 25, its big feature was that, like, a patient would come in and, hey, I have a skin, like a melanoma or something like that. And so they would set the machine up to just do like an electron beam or electron treatment, which I think is more, I think that was more like around the 5 megavolts. Whereas if somebody came in with, say, a deeply rooted tumor or a cancer, like a pancreatic cancer or prostate cancer, breast cancer, or something like that, what they would do is they would crank that voltage up a lot higher, and then the machine would slide in a tungsten target. And so by using a series of magnets, high-powered magnets, it would basically eject this beam into this tungsten target, and then from there you'd get your X-rays. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, kind of. So the difference between the electrons and the photons, a lot of times you're going to be using the same energies. It's just that the electrons are going to interact readily, I guess, than the photons will, which is why that they don't penetrate as deeply into your body, right? Whereas the higher energy photons, they're less likely to have an interaction with like other stuff in your body, which is why they can get deeper. But you are correct. So we have like a target that's like a very proton dense material, and tungsten's like a really common one, and you're going to throw a whole bunch of electrons at them, right? Like you kind of boil them off of like a filament, and then you speed them up really fast, then you hit this big target, or this heavy dense target, and then of what you throw at it, you're going to get some amount of X-rays coming off of it, and that's what they're using to treat the deeper stuff.
Okay, gotcha. And so, the big thing when I was researching this, when we look at the older model, like the Therac 6 and the Therac 20, the biggest change that the AECL made when manufacturing these, and I think they made about 11 of them from about 1982 to about 1987, They abruptly stopped making them because of the issues that we're going to get into. But when I was looking at like what was so famous about this machine is that the biggest change over the previous versions was that it was strictly computer controlled. So that basically meant that a technician didn't need to worry about physically manipulating the machine. The Therac 6 and 25 had interlocks in place where if a parameter wasn't set right, if something wasn't configured and they went to proceed, there was physical mechanisms in place that would prevent the machine from working. And the computer that they designed for this and the computer that the software is going to just drive you bonkers once we dive into it. But when we look at it and say like 1985, 1986, right, computers were the latest and greatest. Computers can't fail. Computers, they do exactly what you tell it to do without fail every single time. And so it was really popular. They marketed this thing, this Therac 25 machine is like, hey, this machine is safer than before because, we have this computer on it now, so you don't have to worry about human intervention.
I was just going to add that, in reading about this, I was really surprised to find that this was like a government-owned, Canadian-produced piece of equipment.
Yes.
That really surprised me because that they made it and they were like, all right, this is good to go without having enough checks in place. Because I have a hard time, not to throw shade at our Canadian neighbors, but I just have a hard time imagining the Atomic Energy Commission here in the U.S. making a machine and putting it in clinics and it having issues because they're so thorough and detailed with the protocols that they produce. So I hope I'm not offending anybody who's Canadian, but I was really shocked when I read that the government made this.
Well, so something to keep in mind here is when I was in engineering school, because when I just kind of stumbled upon it on YouTube, and then when I remember hearing about Therac 25, it kind of jarred my memory. There's so many different facets with this case that really shocked, no pun intended, it really it kind of shocked everybody in America or the FDA and stuff like that, where basically they couldn't just sit there and blindly take what this company was saying. And in all fairness, the company kind of thought what they were doing was right. And they had some really, really bad, what we consider by today's standards, really bad engineering philosophies, which we'll get into. So, we're definitely not throwing shade at our Canadian friends, primarily because at this time, the concept of software was so new. The idea of it failing at this magnitude was kind of inconceivable. Now, when we look at the AECL and how they responded to it, that's where it all went sideways. And so let's take a look at what happened here. So the Therac 25 was put in operation in 1983, and the AECL rolled out 11 of them across Canada and the United States. For the first 2 years, nothing went wrong. Right, for the first 2 years, and this I think was kind of the surprising factor was like, why is it that suddenly this thing was going wrong after 2 years? Usually, when we develop something and we implement it, we're so used to having it just go completely sideways within minutes of implementing it. Right, that's the whole theme of this podcast is we try to engineer and design everything out to the finest detail. And then when we implement it, it all goes sideways. But with the Therac 25, it didn't. It was working great for 2 years. And then in 1985 through 1987, 6 incidences resulted where people got horrifically injured and some even dying from acute radiation poisoning. So let's take a look at these cases here. So the first accident occurred in Kennestone Regional Oncology Center in Marietta on June 3rd, 1985. A 61-year-old woman was receiving a follow-up treatment after a malignant tumor was removed from her breast. When the machine was activated, she felt a tremendous, and I'm doing quotes here, she felt a tremendous rush of heatness, and what is that? A rush of heat and dots. This red hot sensation. She told the operator of the Therac 25, "You burned me." Although later she developed reddening and swelling in the center of the treatment area, the AECL denied that the machine burned the patient, and the swelling was attributed to a normal treatment reaction. Eventually, her shoulder froze and she began to experience spasms. She was admitted to the hospital, but her doctors continued to send her for Therac 25 radiation treatments. Eventually, her breast had to be removed, and she completely lost the use of her shoulder and arm. And what was strange about this is that people were looking at it, doctors were looking at this, and they were noticing that the target area, which was about the size, I think it was like the size of a silver dollar on her breast, it wasn't healing. And for some odd reason, it just kept on decaying, right? Because there was so much damage done. And then on the opposite side, they noticed that there was like a softball size. So like on her shoulder, there was a softball size burn mark. There was one doctor that said, like, this looks like an exit wound. And so that was the first patient that had a bad interaction with this machine.
Wait, was it like all the radiation just went through her body?
Yeah, so basically something went wrong. Something malfunctioned where they were trying to treat something like a breast cancer, deep down inside. And during this treatment, she said that she felt something burning her, intensely burning. That was actually a reoccurring theme, is people would say that they were either feeling something burning them or they were being electrocuted by something.
I just want to throw in, that would probably be like a first sign is, patients don't feel the radiation. So like that people who go get radiation treatment now, you're not going to feel anything because you're not getting hit with enough to be causing damage that you're feeling. So that should have been like a huge red flag that she was complaining about feeling it all the time. That's wild to me. Because normally you could be standing under it and you would never know because you're not feeling it.
Wow. Dang, that's crazy. Because that's the reoccurring theme amongst all of these cases here is the patient immediately responded to intense pain, burning, like they were being blasted by a death ray type of thing. The second incident occurred in Ontario Cancer Foundation clinic in Canada on the 26th of July, 1985. A 45-year-old patient received her 24th Therac 25 treatment. I feel like that's a lot of treatments. During the treatment, the machine caused a treatment pause and issued an H-tilt error message. So this is something else we're going to see kind of cross multiple times here, is this whole error message thing. Like the machine was posting codes that something wasn't working right. So yeah, we got this H-tilt error message. The operator proceeded to push the P button, which meant proceed on this computer. Because that's the thing, like the operator, if there was an error code that they thought was kind of arbitrary or didn't mean anything, they would just hit P, proceed, and most of the time it would work fine. So the machine continued to shut down. So after you tried to proceed, the machine would shut down. So then the operator would push P again and again and again. And then after the 5th attempt, it finally started working again. So each time the machine indicated that no dose had been given to the patient, the operator of the Therac 25 was used to this type of behavior for the machine. So that's another thing to kind of keep in the back of your mind, that after 2 years of technicians being used to this machine, they became very proficient with it, and they could just fly through the keyboard and fly through the movements, and they could set this thing up in no time flat, which is something that I don't think happens today. I think there's a lot of checks and balances that go on with the software, with doctors and technicians and everybody kind of overlapping each other a little bit. So yeah, the Therac 25 was used to this type of behavior for the machine, and called the technician, who found nothing wrong with the machine. This was also a common situation. The parent, however, complained of electrical tingling shock in her lip. Eventually, radiation overexposure was suspected and the patient was hospitalized. She died 3 months later of cancer, but a total hip replacement would have been necessary if she continued to live. So they were treating they were treating her hip. Again, this machine messed up somewhere. It blasted her hip with an incredible amount of energy, and as a result, like she eventually died from these issues. You know, the AECL. Here was their response. They sent out a technician to try to replicate the problem. He couldn't find a source of the problem or replicate the scenario, but he made some software and hardware changes and claimed that the machine was safer by at least 5 orders of magnitude. Whatever that means.
That's like a direct quote from this guy?
Yes. Yeah, 5 orders of magnitude. And I think I have it written down here somewhere. It was, according to AECL, after the 3rd accident, this couldn't have happened because it was made 10 million times safer.
Just from this one engineer?
Yeah, this one tech who came out and he kind of did some software changes, and and then he made, and a quote here says he made some hardware changes, and that supposedly made the machine 10 million times safer.
We should run those numbers again.
Yeah. I think if anyone ever uses that example to you, hey, this is 10 million times better than anything, right? You instantly don't trust that person.
Yeah, it's a red flag.
Yeah.
I feel like this is more of a marketing thing.
Yeah. Like, I have some vitamins, Ed, that I can send you. They will make you 10 million times healthier.
You've seen me, man.
If you're interested. Small fee.
Yeah, but you know me for a while. There is 10 million times healthier than my current state would make me half as healthy as a normal human being. So I'll take 2. So yeah, let's get into the 3rd incident here. So the 3rd accident involved a woman who developed red parallel stripes on her hip. That's the thing that really kind of struck me out with the 3rd case, was those parallel stripes, like those burn marks. Because this is the only one that actually happened. So she was treated at the Yakima Valley Memorial Hospital in 1985. Her doctors continued to order treatments for her even after these stripes appeared. Radiation overexposure was not considered as a cause until over a year later. Eventually, the patient received surgical treatment, and except for minor disability and scarring, is alive and well today. Well, this was written back in 1993. So she got burned, but not as bad, and she survived. But here is the AECL's response. After careful consideration, we are of the opinion that this damage could not have been produced by any malfunction in the Therac 25. The letter further stated that there was no other accidents like this occurring with other machines. So I feel like, were there other people getting weird stripe burn marks on their legs? Maybe not, but there was 2 other people that got radiated pretty heavily. So yeah, they say that there was like this, with nothing was going on with any other machine like this. And with the improvements made previously, the machine was 10 million times safer. Yeah, that's, to me, that's just wild.
Solid.
Let's get on to the fourth case here. So the fourth in the series developed in East Texas Cancer Center in March of 1986. So we're talking about a pretty short time period here. We're talking like a year or so far for 4 of these cases to go down. And some of these cases actually happened a few times in the same location, and it caused the location to be like, we're not doing this anymore. We're shutting this thing down. We don't trust it. So a male patient was to receive therapy on his upper back. The Therac 25 operator had typed in an incorrect treatment information by indicating an X-ray mode instead of an electron mode. Okay, that happens. No big deal. She merely used the cursor up key to edit the mode entry and then quickly press enter. One of the user-friendly features of this computer, right? Like, you didn't have to physically go in and change diopters. You didn't have to make a lot of changes, physical changes in the machine. If you put in an X instead of an E or an E instead of an X, you could just go use the software and change it, and it's perfectly fine. Once she pressed enter to start the treatment, the machine promptly shut down with a treatment pause and a malfunction 54. This is probably the most famous malfunction of them all. A malfunction 54 error message was displayed on the screen. The error message indicated that either a dose was too high or a dose was too low had been delivered. Since an underdose value appeared on the screen and the operator was used to his quirks in how this machine works, she just hit P to proceed with the treatment. The machine repeated the malfunction 54 error again and indicated the same underdose was delivered. The operator had no contact with the patient because the usual audio and video monitors were not working at this time. So, like, this machine was huge. It was the size of a room, consumed an entire room, and then the operator would stand on the outside of the room, obviously for, safety reasons, because you're dealing with radiation. And there would be a camera, and then there would also be a microphone in there that would record, or the technician could hear the patient on the other side. But in this case, it wasn't working. After the first attempt at the treatment, the patient felt an electric shock, or as if someone poured hot coffee on his back. He then was not normal and began to get up from the treatment table. When the second treatment was delivered, the patient felt a tremendous shock in his arm and felt that his hand was leaving his body. He had to pound on the treatment door to get the operator's attention. The patient eventually lost the use of his left arm and both legs and was unable to speak and had several other complications. He died from complications 5 months later from radiation poisoning. And again, the AECL responded, could be a minor electrical malfunction. That was it. It could have been a minor electrical malfunction. And they sent out another engineering firm was sent out to see if they could recreate the accident, but they could not find anything.
How mad would you be, like, if that happened to somebody in your family?
Oh, God.
And that was their excuse. I would be furious.
Yeah, well, and I think that's what's so frustrating about this whole case is that it really boils down to the manufacturer not wanting or not willing to dive into this, or they just tried to play it off. And
it seems like the airline manufacturers have the same problem.
I think a lot of manufacturers have that same problem.
Yeah, I could agree.
Yeah, I really question when the software gives you an error, it says, hey, we might have done too much or too little, and it doesn't know what it did. That's frightening, because it should be able to tell you what it did.
Yeah.
With some accuracy, so you can make decisions based off that.
Well, and that's where we're kind of getting into the heart of the problem here. of what really went down. I want to go over the fifth and then the last accidents here because these two kind of coincide with each other, especially when it came to how they diagnosed the problem with the machine. So a fifth accident occurred, the second at the East Texas Cancer Center. So this is the second one in April of 1986, just 1 month later. As in the previous accident, the same operator entered the wrong mode of the treatment and quickly edited the correct mode and hit in a quick series of enter keys. The machine shut down again with a malfunction 54 message. This time, however, the intercom had been working. The operator heard a loud noise followed by a moaning from the patient. The patient was receiving radiation on the side of his face. He died 3 weeks after the accident after falling into a coma and suffering severe neurological damage. So, the AE cell's response? Nothing. They had nothing to say about this. Although they were, at this time, they were working on a corrective action plan from the FDA. Like, the FDA was like, you guys need to fix this thing because this is getting out of control. So while they were typing up this corrective action plan, which I'll get to here in a minute, the last of the accidents occurred at the Yakima Valley Memorial Hospital. So here's this hospital again. 1987, an operator placed a patient on the turntable in the field light position for smaller position verification doses. After attempting to administer the treatment dose, the machine shut down with a quick malfunction message and a treatment pause. The operator pushed the P button because that's what you do. You just push the P button, and the machine paused again. The machine indicated the patient had received his prescribed 7 rad of treatment. The patient, however, complained of a burning sensation and died 3 months later from complications related to a radiation overdose. The AECL's response to this was nothing but this, nothing, but by this point the FDA got involved and ordered the shutdown of every unit in the country. Some hospitals had already shut theirs down because they were afraid to use it. So by 1987, the FDA said, no more. No more Therac 25s are going to be operating in this country until we figure out what in the world is going on. This doesn't scream dumpster fire. I don't know what does, especially when your entire company's revenue is based on the manufacture of 11 machines. That's going to get pretty expensive.
Talk about putting all of your eggs in one basket.
Yeah, they should have stuck to making microwaves. So, outside responders. The fourth and the fifth accidents happened at the hospital. A physicist who worked at the East Texas Cancer Center sat down to try to figure out what was happening. Eventually came up with a theory that the technicians were quickly changing the beam from E to X. So they were changing from an electron beam to an X-ray beam. So yeah, they were changing it. So they were going from electron where that tungsten target wasn't put in place. So yeah, from E there was no tungsten target to an X. So there was a tungsten target in there. So then the machine would ramp up a much higher voltage and to blast that tungsten target to make the X-rays necessary. So the machine was ramping up to do that. And then quickly changed it back to E, which would create the problem. This was found to be a major source of the problem, but, we'll get back to that later. By the fifth accident, the FDA got involved, determined that the machine was defective, and the AECL would need to supply a corrective action plan or a CAP. Also, the AECL needed to notify all hospitals and patients that the machine was defective and could potentially harm people. So, yeah, Cameron, have you ever had to tell any of your patients that your machines were defective and that they could harm people?
Yeah, I don't think so. if it was, that wouldn't be my job. But no, I don't think we've ever had to say that. And in fact, there is a lot of testing that happens on every machine, right? The machine in our clinic, it gets tested every day. And it gets tested, every month and every year on specific parameters to make sure that it's doing what we think it's doing.
Yeah, and I
And
think
that-
that's actually that's probably one of the major outcomes of this whole incident was making sure that the variables that we put into this computer is producing a very specific output that is consistent or can be consistent each and every single time. So I feel like that's probably one of the major things. I feel like the companies that manufacture the machines that you work with, I feel like they would probably, like the engineers, software engineers, they are all very familiar with like this case study that they took in college, because this is such an iconic case. The CAP, right? This corrective action plan. So the AECL typed up and sent out their CAP with some key fixes. So the first one was that fixing the software problem where the text changing the beam from E to X and back to E again too quickly. They said they fixed that problem. I'm not exactly sure what they did. There is no documentation on exactly what it was they fixed. They just said they fixed that problem from text changing from E to X and then E again. Having malfunction codes 1 through 64 suspended the machine instead of pausing it. So in other words, instead of having the software say, hey, something doesn't seem right, instead the machine would almost pretty much shut down. Okay, so they put circuitry in there that could shut the machine down, where hitting P wouldn't do a whole lot until somebody came in and saw what was going on with it. The other change they made was that hardware interlocks were installed to make sure that the tungsten target was in place before emitting the beam, otherwise the machine wouldn't work. This would prevent the patient from getting hit with 15 to 20,000 rads of radiation. This was kind of like the main crux of the problem. The technician would come in and they would press E and be like, oh, wait, crap. No, it's not supposed to be, it's supposed to be X. Or it was already X and then it needed to be E, right? The machine would take 8 seconds to transition between E to an X mode or from an X to an E mode. Meaning it took 8 seconds for the machine to move that tungsten target from the path of the beam to like move it in or move it back out again. So if somebody went in and changed it too quickly from an X to an E and then just hit enter or hit proceed, well, that target may not be where it needs to be. And therefore, the patient is going to receive that, like, instead of like 7 to 10 rads, they're receiving 15 to 20,000 rads, because they have to blast that target, that tungsten target, with so much energy to produce a certain degree of X-rays. That thing acts like a filter, right? Without that filter in there, you're just receiving the full dose of what this machine could produce. The other thing was that they needed to perform thousands of hours of testing on each software change. So I feel like that should have been done in the first place. Something to keep in mind with this software, and this is probably one of the luckiest guys in the world, but when they dove into the software, this is where it gets really sketchy. The company found a hobbyist. He was a programmer. And, well, his hobby was programming. And they contracted this guy to write all 100,000 lines of code, which, by the way, if you look at your cell phone and you look at any icon on your phone, that's 100,000 lines of code, right? It's like 100,000 lines of code is a drop in the bucket. And so the company, the AECL, actually used one of their employees who was a programming hobbyist to write the code that would run this machine. The funny thing is nobody knew who that was. Nobody's been able to track down exactly who wrote the code for this machine, which if anybody's into programming or done dabbling in programming, you know that when you start diving into code or trying to like sort through everything, you will see evidence of who worked on it, when and where. It's like it's all recorded. And this guy somehow wrote all this programming and left no marks of who he was, what he was doing, what was he thinking. And that's kind of, to me, that's the most craziest part of it. So while these fixes were being worked on, the 6th accident took place, and the FDA finally pulled the plug on the entire model across the whole country in 1987. So what really went wrong? I think we kind of touched on it a few times here. So everything that went wrong with the Therac 25 can be broken into 3 different categories. You've got the hardware component, you've got the software component, and you've got the human nature part of it. And engineering, especially when you're dealing with anything electrical, especially electrical devices that have a physical impact on the environment that is operated by a human, there's a lot of points of failure, and it can get pretty bad. So the hardware, the Therac 25 didn't differ all that much from its predecessors, but due to the software components, some things could be omitted to save money in manufacturing or divert those costs to the advancing the emitter or the rotating bed and whatnot. They figured, well, we got this cool software. The software will do what it's told, and it will do it right every time. Therefore, we don't need to spend extra money on interlocks and safety mechanisms. We can spend that money on other cool features that we can use to market this machine.
Wait, so they hired this freelance hobbyist programmer and probably paid him pennies, and then they're like, "Oh, we can cheap out more."
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, I just wanted to make sure I had that right.
But I mean, in all fairness, I mean, when in the 1980s, right, we're seeing the first Mac computer coming out. We're seeing the Commodore. We are seeing like Sun Microsystems, where they realized that home computers could actually do more than industrial computers. And I think a lot of people were like, well, shoot, if you have a machine that can only say yes or no to any question you ask it, eventually you're going to get the right answer. Like, what could possibly go wrong? Because today, everybody here who's been alive, whoever used a computer, has seen a computer absolutely crash, as in my computer that's now sitting outside my office window. It physically crashed. It's probably in pieces. So we're used to having software glitch out and bug out on us and crash and everything. But when you're only dealing with 100,000 lines of code, keep in mind Windows is billions of lines of code. Like I think it's the largest software development team that Microsoft has is working on Windows registries. So by today's standards, we're used to having these things fail, but in 1986, it's just 100,000 lines of code. It's not that much. It shouldn't be failing. Yeah, yeah, we could take a look at that here in a little bit. So yeah, they saved a lot of money by using the software. So there's so much faith placed in the computer software that the designers removed the interlocks. The interlocks prevented the machine from proceeding if something wasn't set up right. So that's what the Therac 6 and the Therac 20 had, was a series of devices where if the operator didn't set the machine up correctly, it would blow a fuse and shut down. In order to generate the X-ray, a tungsten target would need to be inserted in front of the emitter to, 1, turn the electron beam onto the photons and thus generate the X-ray, and 2, a series of strong magnets would have to position themselves to focus the beam so that the cancer cells were effectively getting zapped. To switch from an E to an X mode, the machine needed 8 seconds to make the adjustments. If that 8 seconds that the machine wasn't configured correctly, if it wasn't set up correctly, the old machines would blow a fuse, and that's it. The whole room would go dark, and and we're done. But because the software was giving out these error messages, eventually, like there was no safeguards on the hardware side of things to shut things down if it wasn't set up correctly. So yeah, I mean, this is kind of like the effect of, hey, let's say if you had a kitchen microwave. Like if you look at your microwave in your kitchen, you notice how there's like a screen door covering that glass. And if you look at those holes in that screen, that's actually a bit smaller than the actual microwave that the machine is producing. So imagine taking that screen off or taking the door off and turning on the microwave and then staring at it. Right? You're going to get blasted with a lot of energy. And that's kind of what was going on here. The second part was software. The largest amount of the blame could be attributed to the software because it was written under really sketchy parameters. The software was extremely untested and underdeveloped. It was also pulled from other Therac machines. So here is the mindset of the engineers. Hey, we're going to build this new machine. And this machine had this software that was used as an accessory. Most people didn't bother with it. Most people didn't use it. Most people didn't care when they were dealing with the Therac 30 or the Therac 6 or the 20. Whatever. It's cool, man. Like, the software is software. But what they decided is that, hey, the software, since it worked so well on these other machines that were strictly mechanical use, with the software being an accessory, they just ported that over. They just literally copied it and pasted it into the Therac 25, thinking that was the main safety feature, not the hardware interlocks and all that kind of stuff. That's kind of where the psychology or the engineering psychology went horribly awry. So when the software was moved over to a different machine with the safety interlocks removed, the software wasn't given the authority to shut the process down if things were not set right. Yeah, it would scream out a problem, but then why were the technicians not looking at the problem? Well, let's dive into that a little more. So, first things first. If something wasn't right, the software would pause the machine and post an error code followed by a number. There was no instruction manual that came with these machines because everybody was so used to using the Therac 6 and the Therac 20. There was no instruction manual whatsoever. There was nothing to indicate what the actual error was. After all, this is not something new to programming. To save storage, it's easier and cheaper to throw out a code or a series of codes rather than supply a deep description of what was wrong. So keep in mind, these machines had a very, very limited amount of storage. We're talking just a few kilobytes. Today, if your phone glitches out, or like if you ever used a Windows machine and it blue screened and it said it needed to send out a report to Microsoft to diagnose what went wrong, that's cool. Your machine has all the hardware and the storage necessary to send a very detailed report to Microsoft or to whoever so they can pinpoint what was going on. Well, the Therac 25 didn't have that capability. It just had numbers 1 through 64, and it would spit out an error, and the technician was supposed to know what that meant. To me, that's kind of a red flag, especially when there was no user manual for the technician to look up. I don't know. To me, if I was operating a machine like that and it spit out an error 54 code, I'd be kind of inclined to pull out the manual and just look up, code 54, the tungsten target isn't in place. Do not proceed. Well, that would have been handy to know, but the technicians were never given that.
Can I add something, Ed? One thing that I actually really like this microwave example you're giving, because you're talking about the interlocks. And interlocks are really important because they prevent the machine from doing things until it's ready to, right? And there's a lot of studies on people making mistakes in any industry, like in radiation or in airlines, right? And a lot of those studies indicate that better training of people is the least effective way to make improvements in safety, and that forced constraint is the best way, or one of the best ways. to improve safety. And in the same vein of like the microwave, right? Like your microwave can't turn on when your door's open, right?
Yeah.
Like there is a mechanism that prevents it from turning on. And sure, the microwave company could put a sign on the front that says, "Do not turn on microwave with door open," and have commercials about it, and they could have manuals. And that's just not, if they did that and your microwave could turn on, people would do it all the time. They would mess that up and they would turn on their microwave while the door is open. So the more effective method is, let's just not let it turn on if the door is open. That is going to work better than expecting people to not turn it on. And I think that was one of the mistakes, like you were saying, is that they removed their interlocks thinking that everything was taken care of. And I think that's a big mistake that they made. So the machines we use today are more like they have a lot of interlocks and things can't turn on until they're ready to.
Well, and it's such a fascinating concept of engineering, because this was something that this whole interlock idea was something that was even around in World War II. Ever noticed how you never had a B-class bomber explode with like a mile-wide radius when they got shot in the air? Well, because all those bombs, those 500-pound bombs, they would not be activated until they were 1,000 feet above the target, right? They had this mechanism inside of it that if that thing was in the air, you could sit there and pound the tip of that bomb all you want with a hammer. It would not go off. You could pull out the pin to activate the bomb, and it would still not go off. But there was pressure sensors inside of it that wouldn't let the bomb or the ignition sequence begin until it was like 1,000 feet above the target. And then from there, it could blow up at any time. So I find it kind of fascinating that we didn't take that mindset from World War II to work on a machine that, World War II, we developed a nuclear bomb to kill people. Now we created this radioactive machine to cure people. There was less safety mechanisms inside of that thing than there was in a nuclear bomb. So just kind of put that into perspective a little bit. A lot of faith in that software. So the last part of it here was the human nature. So this is kind of what you're touching upon, Cameron. Humans are creatures of habit. So Kara, you and I, we both worked in transportation. To this day, do you remember the keystrokes to go through to book a load from EDI?
I'm sure I do. I just haven't tried it, to be honest. But yeah, probably.
But yeah, but do you know how to service fail a load?
Oh yeah, that's. Yep, I got that.
So Cameron, yeah, you probably don't know what we're talking about, but we use some software. A lot of industries use it. It's called AS400, and it's like old green screen technology, old green screen software, and it looks super archaic, and it is beyond ancient, but it's fast, and it works most of the time, and it's all key commands. And you can just fly through this thing. When I first got trained up on it, I could book 150 loads in minutes, and each load required about 15 steps to book. But you could, once you learned these key commands and you knew what to do every single time. And that's why I really appreciate you bringing up this notion, or the concept that a patient's cancer treatment is it's like a signature. It is unique, like their own DNA. You create a plan that will only work on that person and not anybody else, or won't be as effective on anybody else. But when you have this software and you've got humans where you have two rows of variables, and all they have to do is just put in a number, hit tab, put in a number, hit tab, put in a number, hit tab, put in an E or an X, hit tab, enter, and then F5, boom, right? That can be done in less than a second. And that's the reason why the Therac 25 wasn't causing issues the first 2 years. It was because people weren't proficient enough with the software, because before everybody was using the hardware aspect, right? Everybody was so used to turning dials and positioning things. They weren't used to using the software, but then after a couple of years, people were getting really, really, really fast at inputting the variables or inputting the data necessary to produce this treatment. The machine wasn't keeping up with it, especially if they made changes at the last second, especially from an E to an X mode. These people were so proficient with the software that they were actually causing the machine to trip up. And so, like, that's kind of that's pretty much where a brunt of these issues. It was a culmination of not having the safety interlocks. It was the software not being properly tested. I think when they got done with it, when they actually did release the proper cap and they did all the repairs and the upgrades and everything, the code turned into something that was like millions of lines long. So that just kind of give you an idea of how much they had to fiddle with this thing. And then they went back and they put all the old interlocks in, like they did with the Therac 6 and the Therac 20. And, they put the interlocks in. And then suddenly the human nature remained. The human beings were still just flying through the settings, setting everything up within seconds and pressing enter. But now, like what you were saying before, Cameron, there was no way the machine would proceed. Right? There was things put in place to prevent the human fallibility of it all. And so that, in a nutshell, is the dumpster fire that is Therac 25. And I guess my thing is like, how is it different today, Cameron? Like, how come we don't? Obviously, we know what changes they've made here with the hardware and the software, but can you shed some light on how it's different today than it was back in 1986 when doing radiation therapy?
Sure, yeah. I mean, I'm certainly not an expert on 1980s radiation therapy machines. I'm sure a medical physicist who's been practicing for 30 years,
yeah,
or an engineer. Some of these companies have engineers that come and repair the machines who's been working for 30 years would maybe know a bit more. But there's definitely things we have in place now, and I don't know if they're a direct result of this incident or just something somebody recognized that, hey, we can make this safer, that would easily prevent issues like this. And a lot of those things are forced constraint things, like I was saying. They're automated processes, right? Or they're there's a lot of redundancy in what we do, which is a good thing. So, for example, each machine, like the machine in my clinic, has what's called an ion chamber. It detects how much radiation roughly there is, and the beam shoots through the ion chamber before it reaches the patient. And so it can tell you, it tracks how much radiation is exiting the machine and therefore going into the patient. And it has automatic shutoffs, right? Like if it reaches a certain point, it'll just turn off. And we don't just have one of those ion chambers, there's two of them. In case, let's say, your ion chamber wasn't working, they have to be in agreement that, hey, we think this amount of radiation left the machine and entered the body. And so something like that would have easily, turned off this Therac 25 and prevented that. There's a couple of other ones. All the machines have a timer, and this is specific to everybody's treatment, where it will shut off after so much time, because we know that if you're receiving, 200 rads or centigrade, that it's going to take about this much time. And then, they add like 20 or 30% to that. And so for whatever reason, you were sitting there longer than that, and the machine would just turn off because it knows that there's no reason for it to be on.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah. There's a few other things too. For example, like a lot of the treatments that we deliver get what we call QA, just quality assurance, but essentially is your treatment gets delivered on the machine while nobody's in there to make sure that it is running it as it should.
Oh, so it almost sounds like like a test dose to make sure.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, to make sure that, hey, we designed this and we want the machine to do this, but just because I say, hey, do this thing, is it really going to do it? And so that's part of our QA process, is that certain types of plans, like more complicated plans, they get run on the machine, and we can verify, hey, the machine can actually do what we want it to do here. And if it doesn't, then we, change it. So there's a lot of interlocks, a lot of redundancy in the processes that we have, right? And that's not just for the delivery, like when you go get radiation therapy, before each treatment, normally, even if they've seen you 20 times already, typically the radiation therapists are going to say, hey, what's your name? What's your date of birth? Because even though they know who you are, it's just a way for us to process and verify that we have the right patient and that the right treatment is loaded for this patient. So there's just a lot of processes like that to make sure that everybody's set up right. And even before you get treated, a lot of times we take like an X-ray or like a special like CT scan that we do on our machines. And then we make sure that you are lined up in the exact same way that you were when we designed our plan, so that, if we're treating your lung or something, right? They're going to do like a little CT scan to see that, hey, where we're delivering is in the same spots where we want it to be. And they're going to do that every time you get treated. And all those CT scans get reviewed later on to make sure that they were where they're supposed to be. So there's a lot of processes to ensure that they're safe, and there's a lot of clinics that are always reviewing what they're doing to see, hey, is there anything we could change to be safer? And that's always really good too.
All right, well, there you have it. We have ourselves Therac 25 death ray machine, followed by a broken computer that decided to cut out on my end, that completely deleted my entire existence from, this latter half of the recording.
We made it work.
Well, actually, I think you made it work, because I feel like you understood very quickly that my computer, my initial computer flew out the window, and then my secondary computer, borrowed by my brother, wasn't set up right. And so, yeah, I had to cut off the whole episode thing right at the end of my brother's little monologue. I have to say, I appreciate what went into the Therac 25 machine and these disasters, these issues with these patients, these really unforeseen situations. They were looked at, they were recognized, they understood that people were dying. Keep in mind that there was 6 or 7 total instances of people getting hit with this default machining, to the point where, at least the American government, just say what you want about them. I mean, it's always been a hot mess, but they cut it quits. They're like, guys, we can't do this anymore. I understand that you've treated thousands and thousands, maybe tens of thousands of people, but 6 people falling victim to this is too many.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like, was there a lot of bad engineering? Yes. Was there a lot of faulty expectations? Most definitely. That's probably the biggest thing, right? These people thought, hey, we don't need safety interlocks. We don't need these mechanical features, because we have software that will do whatever we tell it to do every single time. Yes or no, no fail. And we came across a situation where the software could not keep up with the mechanical needs of the hardware, and people got horrifically injured. Some even lost their lives.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess my thing is this. We listen to my brother-in-law. Like, he is the guy who is instrumental in operating this machine. He has to set all the parameters. He has to set everything up. And if you remember in the beginning of the interview here, like when you get a prescription for a radiotherapy treatment, it is customed to that person. There's no such thing as a one treatment fixes all or one treatment applies to everybody. Yeah, radiation therapy is not a latex glove. It will not work for everybody. And so here we are, like we look at an instance like this, which, yeah, if you're the manufacturer of this machine, you have yourselves a gigantic dumpster fire. But I feel like this is where a lot of companies maybe took a step back. A lot of companies, when they took this whole Therac 25 thing as a case study and they taught their up-and-coming dosimetrists and their up-and-coming physicists and engineers, I feel like they all looked at this and they probably thought, okay, what can we do to not let this happen again? And so my big thing is this: while this is a dumpster fire for our dear brethren and the old Canadians, it's not a thing that's happening now in America. I don't know. It's one of those things where we can look on it, learn from it, and then actually save lives from it. So yeah, it's kind of a scary episode. I really hope people who are diagnosed with these issues that would need this kind of technology, bear in mind, my brother-in-law is in the forefront. He will, he and his other, compatriots across the country will make sure that this kind of technology won't harm people, but probably save people's lives.
Yeah, well said. I mean, I don't have a strong scientific background, so for me it was a lot of big words that I had to listen to once more to fully understand. But the way I understand it is kind of like, what it reminds me of is malfunctions in 747s and airplanes. Airplane crashes don't happen very often, but when they do, usually it's a manufacturer error.
Oh.
That's kind of what it reminds me of, and that's like the easiest way for me to correlate it.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
That is actually the perfect analogy for this, because the way that America works, and keep in mind, Kara, you and I, we look at all the times that America has like completely fallen apart at the seams and whatnot. We look at America as a whole and its ability to kind of like learn from issues. America is very, very quick, and this is one of the greatest qualities I would say with America is, if we see a pattern, we will call it quits. We will stop and say, guys, no more, right? We don't need to let things explode into thousands and tens of thousands of cases. And I know there's some examples in history where that didn't quite pan out, but Americans have a real big problem with other Americans suffering. And so that's kind of what happened here, is everybody kind of got involved and said, hey, We've got 6 people who were horrifically injured by this thing. We are shutting this thing down until there is a valid action plan on how to make it work again. And so, like, to me personally, I feel as though that there's a degree of success, right? Kind of like Apollo 13. Hey, did we land on the moon? No. Did the oxygen tanks blow? Yes. Did the crew almost die? Yes. But did they get back to Earth safely? Yes. And that's a success. That's a win.
It's technically the entirety of the evolution of the medical community as a whole.
Yeah.
And science in general is just experiment and experiment. Medicine has a very interesting history to where it's all terrible and awful, but what can we do to make it better?
Yeah, well, and I think America, there is a history of some really, really sketchy experiments.
Oh, in the UK. I mean, I'd say worldwide.
Yeah.
Looking at just medical history in general is a very interesting and dark history when you really dive deep into it.
Yeah, because how else can you understand, if you're in the 1700s, how else can you understand how a human heart beats unless you crack open the chest and see what it's doing?
Or inoculation.
Yeah, inoculation, or, you know, like, hey, this person just died, let's rip everything out and see what's going on. I mean, Keep in mind, there was a lot of early monks in Europe who thought that a woman's uterus was an octopus that just traveled throughout the whole body, and if the uterus ever got to the brain, then it would make a woman cranky and emotional and menstruating, and they were clinically psychotic.
For some reason, I'm not offended by that.
I'm actually offended by even saying that. It's one of those things, like, I plan on diving into some history of early anatomy people who thought that a uterus was an octopus that just traveled everywhere.
So dumb. Maybe I'm not offended by it because I find it so dumb.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's so ridiculous. But it kind of explains things on their plane a little bit, given their lack of knowledge. But the point is that, okay, we live in a country that most people, most Americans, I'm ruling out government factions and politics, just leave that out, that the average neighbor, your average person living next to another American, doesn't want to see harm caused upon that person. And so we've really created a system where if there's enough examples of harm being caused on somebody, then we speak up. We say something. We say, hey, this isn't right. And you could fault America for a lot of things right now. Guys, this country is a shambles. But the actual individual people, no, they're not going to stick around too long for people seeing their own people suffer. And so that's kind of what happened here, right? There were so many people that spoke up. It was actually so many people, but also so few people. They spoke up and they said, we need to put a stop to this, and that's what happened. And now we actually have a very functional, very capable system of radiotherapy and dosimetrists and engineers that, you know, like, yes, those six people had to suffer a lot, but now we're saving thousands, if not tens of thousands of people. And that's pretty cool. And I like that. It's a dumpster fire. Oh, I got it, Kara.
I'm listening.
I'm going to base it off of that text you sent me.
Okay.
It's not a dumpster fire. It's a dumpster garden.
Beautiful.
Whatever a dumpster garden looks like, just envision it. So yeah, that's the Therac 25. I know it's been like a month in the making. I'm learning how to record. I'm learning how to get other people to record and not have, like 10 screaming kids around them. Kara is, trying to train the next, future group of kids of leaders in this country. There was a lot on this episode that we had to kind of process and work out, but here we are. We are now ready to take the next step.
We're here.
So, Kara, what do you got coming up?
I am going to do a quick 30 to 45 minute analysis on failed historical paint restoration.
I'm thinking Jesus.
I.e. the potato Jesus.
The potato...
And all of the fun ways that I can describe these failed paint restorations to our listeners as best as I can, because that's always a good time to be as descriptive as possible with these things. So I just kind of want to have fun with it, and yeah, I'll give you some details about maybe like who the person was who tried to restore it, and maybe why that's actually a super hard job, and I'm not going to give them that hard of a time for it. Painting is layering, and then once you paint over the original and maybe you don't have a reference, that was a bad idea. You should have taken a photo of it, because now it's just a flat one color solid shape, and you have to figure it out.
Blotchy, fuzzy thingy, face and some wool kind of a thing.
Yeah, it happens. Anyway, so that's what I've got going on. Just as, like a palette cleanser. We've talked about some heavy stuff. A lot of like radiation talk recently.
I feel like everything that I talk about involves radiation and death.
Yeah. Of course, like mine was a lot of Jebediah's dying of dysentery. So I think we just need something kind of silly and dumb. Yeah. And then we'll go back to the serious stuff.
Unless you're the proprietor of that painting that you shelled out $17 million to restore, and you end up with a potato face spud with black, brown, fuzzy fringes.
It's a spud muffin.
I love it. It's a spud muffin.
Done. We did it.
Yeah, so we can all die, and we can go stand before God and Jesus, and like, hey, God, yeah, I recognize you, but Jesus, you look like a spud muffin.
Perfect. It was his baby photo. Don't judge.
Yeah. The photography was laxing back then.
The camera moved at the last minute. It was a mess.
Yeah, the donkey and the stable kicked the cameraman, and yeah, it was a bad deal.
It was a whole thing. That's actual life with kids.
Wow. Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to that, because I feel like there's a lot of examples where, look at like the Venus de Milo, where they had the arms, they didn't know which arm or direction they were supposed to be put on, so they just threw them away.
Yeah, because that's what you do instead of winging it. Anyway, we'll get into that. I'm going to be as appropriate as humanly possible, because we want to be family friendly here on the Days Dumpster Fire. So I'm sorry. I'm not going to discuss any extra appendages. I know my middle schoolers would love it, but I'm not going to do that.
I'm talking about arms.
I'm just throwing it out there, because I'm sure, are some questionable art restoration attempts out there in the world.
You'll notice, Kara, that if you were to look up the stats on art restorations in terms of appendages still being intact, you'll probably notice that a vast majority of those artworks, paintings, drawings, statues, the ones that have the one appendage still intact are the ones that made it their way through.
Of course.
And so that's something that we could probably bring up there, because it's like, why is it that this one body part is left in, and therefore everything else can be excluded in this restoration and it's all good? Meanwhile, we could leave out things like heads and arms and hands and fingers, which, if I remember correctly, and I may have to get one of my coworkers involved, he's actually a legit art historian. This is what he majored in. Like, the hands and fingers are without a doubt the most difficult thing to sculpt or to draw. You probably know this because you have an art background, Kara. It's funny how that we will leave out hands, arms, fingers, the works, but then we'll leave everything else involved that only does one thing only a couple of times a day.
Well, I mean, we could really get into this and I could tell you, but maybe we'll save it because we don't want to spoil the fun.
True.
Let's just say, remember that part on the Goonies where they dropped a little statue and then he was like, "Oh, that's my mom's favorite piece," and it fell off. We'll just leave it at that.
Sick. Yeah, so, humanity's ability to mean well and intend to do well and, try to preserve art. Me, personally, I kind of want to look into the Elgin marbles some, because that is an unbelievable story of how some well-doers and maybe some shady people completely destroyed a huge portion of Western development. But what I want to look into, though, I want to dive into the stuff that came out of the Civil War.
Are we moving on to your next project?
Custer's Last Stand.
All right.
We're talking about a bro who couldn't get ice cream, who was willing to sacrifice his name and his ice cream for everything.
Homie wanted ice cream.
Hey, no, Custer's Custer. So yeah, I'm going to be diving into Custer's Last Stand. I originally dove into this. I originally was thinking, oh yeah, I could go to Wikipedia. I could just Yahoo News. I could just kind of skim up on it and figure out, it's a hot mess that he got himself into. But then as I started diving into it, I quickly discovered that Custer, he was kind of a douchebag guy, but he also was a heck of a fighter, and he knew how to handle really, really stressful, complicated military situations. And that, like, the situation that he got himself into with the Native Americans that resulted in his entire battalion, including himself, getting absolutely decimated. It wasn't one of these things where, hey, bro, take your horses, take your guns, take your cannons, head into this valley, just wipe them out. You're American. You are, you're the best of the best of the best. You can handle it. And that's when I kind of discovered that, holy crap, the American government at that time was pitting Native American nation against the Native American nation, and they were setting things up so that, the Native Americans would kind of fight each other and kill each other off, and then the Americans could come in and start claiming the gold that was in that area.
It's messed up, man.
Yeah, no, it's messed up from every angle, and I had no idea that this was going on. We all know the legend of Custer's Last Stand and whatnot, but then, man, when you dive into it, it's like, okay, we are dealing with Dante's dumpster fire. And it's like layer after layer after layer.
Yikes.
So here's the thing, guys. Kara has got a really good palate cleanser lined up. Kara has kind of maybe addressed some of the comical. I don't think it's as comical as one could think it would be, with destroying a potential Renaissance era period painting.
Hey man, it destroys my heart, but you have to make fun of it because what are you gonna do?
They glue that heart back together.
That's right, with comedy.
You glue it back together improperly, and you restore it incorrectly. You glue it back together in some other weird shape.
That's how we get Greek mythical monsters.
So yeah, no, that's kind of what we've got going on. I know it's been quite a breadth of time between our last episode and this Therac 25 episode. We've had a lot going on, because life is crazy. But I feel like we are now in a position where we are going to kind of dive into some more exotic subject matters. And yeah, we are here. We are full of dumpster fires. I hope you keep listening. I hope you keep it a hot mess. And we will we'll meet up again soon.
See you next time. Bye.